was fine to be experimental, and that's one of the things that DeSantis needs to do, is to show himself a sort of new person, not do everything in the traditional way, in the same way as the others. He was best in the forum when he was simply answering questions, because it just showed that he's intelligent and on top of the issues, and he's properly briefed and really understands those things, which is very important. That in itself is substantive.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford. I'm here today with Editor-in-Chief Hugo Gurdon. And Hugo, you wrote in your column this week about the fact that Hillary Clinton commented publicly on the limits of Joe Biden's age and abilities to run for office. Why is that a significant thing?
Yeah, it was interesting. She was talking to the Financial Times, and she said that Joe Biden's age was, she didn't actually call it a liability, but she said that it was something which people had a legitimate interest in. And then she showed that she was willing to inflict damage on Joe Biden, because she said that she hoped he would stay focused and be able to compete. And by saying those things, she actually implicitly raised people's attention to the things which are his weakness, which is, he often fails to stay focused. She didn't say, I expect he'll stay focused, or he's bound to stay focused. She just said she hoped that he would. And that expresses a view which is held widely in the Democratic Party. When she said, hope that he would be able to compete, that raises the thought, reminds people of its opposite, which is an inability, an incapacity, perhaps an incompetence. So she has plausible deniability on the way that she spoke, and she did say that he doesn't get credit for that she thinks he deserves, but nevertheless she was willing to inflict damage on him. And the point that I wanted to make is that although Hillary stands out for saying these things now on the Democratic side, there isn't any doubt that Democrats generally think the same things. It's almost exactly a year ago, a few days over a year ago, that David Axelrod, who was President Obama's kind of campaign guru, was talking about Joe Biden's age being a liability. All that has happened since then is that the Democrats did rather better in the midterm elections than they expected to do, and that was largely Donald Trump's fault. But having done reasonably well in the midterms, they decided to rally around Joe Biden. But their concerns about Joe Biden have not gone away. They're there, but under the surface.
Will those concerns maybe be canceled out to some degree if Donald Trump ends up being the GOP nominee, given that Trump is also pretty old himself?
Yes, I think that Donald Trump being the nominee will eliminate to a substantial extent the questions about and the issue of age, although Donald Trump is obviously more vigorous. But it's interesting that despite their obvious differences, there are some very evident headline similarities between Biden and Trump. Both of them have been around for about 80 years, and both of them are inclined and in fact seem incapable of stopping themselves from barking out falsehoods whenever they're speaking in public. And so the contrast that Republicans would be able to draw with Biden, were they to nominate one of the other runners in the people trying to seek the presidential nomination, will be eliminated if they choose Trump. The age issue will be one of them.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis formally launched his presidential campaign this past week. There's been a lot of discussion about sort of the odd choice of forum, Twitter Spaces, for that launch. But what did you think of when they finally got it working, the substance of what he chose to talk about in that launch?
I think the substance was actually very solid. He was very coherent. I mean, I think that the forum was, frankly, not a good choice. I mean, it was fine to be experimental, and that's one of the things that DeSantis needs to do, is to show himself a sort of new person, not do everything in the traditional way, in the same way as the others. He was best in the forum when he was simply answering questions, because it just showed that he's intelligent and on top of the issues, and he's properly briefed and really understands those things, which is very important. That in itself is substantive. He also showed that he talked well on policy, showed that he would attack Trump on issues like COVID and the handling of the pandemic, on immigration and border security. He was willing to attack Trump on substantive issues, and of course Joe Biden as well, even more so. So I think that he was very substantive, and I don't know that the peculiarities of his launch on Twitter are going to stand out, in several weeks' time. They'll slip into the past, and his substantive grasp and competence will come out.
Well, Hugo, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Hugo and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.